John's small scout ship shuddered violently as it struck the hull of a massive alien vessel soaring through the nebula. Alarms blaring inside the cramped cockpit, lights flashing overhead, stars streaking past the viewport. John gritted his teeth against the pain in his shoulder and struggled to steady the controls before the ship spun free of the larger hull, drifted toward the silent expanse of space, and finally came to rest with a shudder that rattled every panel and sent his breath echoing in the cramped cabin air, hissed through the emergency vents as John forced open the cockpit door and braced himself against the hallway wall, the corridor glowing with pale blue light that hummed with strange energy. He staggered forward until he saw a massive silhouette blocking the way. An 8-foot alien woman in gleaming armor loomed over him. Her eyes cold and sharp, she spoke in a low voice that resonated through his chest. He could not understand her words, but he felt her scorn. She nudged him with the tip of her boot, and he tumbled to the floor in the sterile chamber beyond bright lights snapped on overhead. As John lay on a metal table beneath a ring of scanning devices, the alien woman paced beside him and tapped a slender finger against her chin. She studied his broken suit and bruised face with obvious disgust. She gestured toward a console, and a drone hovered forward to scan his body. John winced as nanite rays passed over the damage to his shoulder. He tried to speak, but his voice came out rough and hoarse. The alien commander turned away and strode from the room, leaving him alone with the soft hum of machines' hours. Passed in a blur of blurry lights and strange voices until the door slid open again and the alien woman returned, now dressed in lighter garb that revealed her towering height. She offered him a drink in a small container and gestured for him to sit. John accepted the drink and felt warmth spread through his chest, his confusion mixed with relief as he realized she carried no weapon at the moment. She tilted her head and watched him drink with an expression that hinted at curiosity beneath contempt. He dared a faint nod of thanks, and she seemed surprised by the gesture. Her lips curved in a fleeting hint of amusement. Sudden tremor shook the entire vessel, and the lights flickered. The hum of the engines became a low roar as red alert sirens wailed. The alien commander leaped from her seat and barked orders in her harsh language. Hatches sealed and bulkheads shifted into defensive positions. John scrambled to his feet and felt the table slide across the floor as gravity shifted wildly. The commander grabbed his hand and yanked him along as debris rattled around them. They burst into a narrow corridor where sparks flew from ruptured conduits and the air tasted of scorched metal. Together, they raced toward an access shaft that led to the exterior hull breach. The alien commander moved with the speed of a seasoned warrior despite her height. John kept pace, though each step sent pain through his injured shoulder. She glanced back and barked a sharp command that he barely understood, but he followed without hesitation. At the breach, they found a gaping hole in the hull where air vented into the vacuum of space. Exposed wiring arced and sparks danced against the void beyond. She reached for his hand again and dragged him toward the maintenance ladder that led to the repair drones. John's heart pounded as he climbed the ladder into the open void where repair drones hovered and a magnetic clamp console awaited them. He strapped himself into the safety harness and felt the strange chill of space through his suit. The alien commander joined him and pressed a small device against the main breach panel. Jets of repair fiber wove across the rupture like living threads. The panel sealed with a hiss of compressed air. She turned to John and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. He met her gaze and saw respect flicker in her eyes, even as she loomed tall above him. Neither spoke as the repaired hull shimmered in the starlight. But in that moment, a silent bond was forged between fragile human courage and unstoppable alien strength. Stood on the repair deck, feeling the faint hum of the alien ship beneath his boots. He watched Tira move with confident grace as she checked the status console beside him, her tall frame silhouetted against the swirling nebula light. The repair drones floated nearby, working on minor leaks, their soft glow casting shadows across the gleaming floor. John flexed his injured shoulder, feeling the faint ache from the earlier breach. He shrugged off the pain and focused on learning the alien controls. Tira glanced at him and spoke in her low voice that hummed in the chamber. John listened closely to her words, even though he could not understand them yet. He repeated the syllables under his breath, trying to mimic her tone. Determined to bridge the gap between their worlds, together they followed a series of glowing paths that led deeper into the heart of the vessel. John could sense the ship's core pulsing with life, lights shifting in time with the power flow. He marveled at the alien technology that felt alive beneath his fingertips. Tira paused at a junction and turned to him, her gaze sharp and assessing. She tapped a symbol on a console, and a holographic map sprang to life. Blue lines traced the ship's corridors and modules. Red icons marked areas that needed repair. John pointed at one of the red icons, and she nodded approvingly. Then she led him down a corridor lined with translucent walls. Through the wall, John saw rows of crystalline reactors glowing softly like giant stars. He felt a mixture of awe and fear as he realized how small his own ship's engine had been in comparison. Tira reached out and guided his hand to a panel. She pressed her palm against it, and the crystals dimmed slightly as energy shifted aside to ease the stress on the damaged section. John learned quickly under her patient instruction. He tapped at a control pad and watched as backup power rerouted. Through alternate conduits, the glow of the broken reactor faded and the corridor light steadied. Tira watched him with silent pride, even though she would never admit it. Her icy demeanor softened in that moment as she saw human determination overcome physical weakness. A sudden alarm echoed through the ship, and red lights blinked on the walls. Tira rose and motioned for John to follow as she sprinted down the corridor. Her long strides carrying her ahead with effortless speed, John dashed after her, his mind racing with questions about the alarm and whether danger lurked ahead. They arrived at a junction where two alien soldiers stood guard, their weapons trained on the bulkhead ahead. Tira raised a hand and spoke a command that made the soldiers step aside without a word. John observed the silent authority she held and felt a new respect for her rank and for the power that humans could earn through courage. Behind the guards, the corridor led to a vast chamber filled with floating orbs and beams of light. In the center, a massive control sphere pulsed like a heartbeat, surrounded by alien engineers moving with careful precision. Tira motioned for John to stay back as she approached the sphere and placed her hand upon its surface. The pulsing light stabilized, and the engineers paused their work, looking to Tira for direction. John felt the tension in the room ease as the power fluctuations subsided. The sphere's glow became steady and calm. Tira turned to John and gestured for him to join her. He stepped forward and placed his hand beside hers, feeling warmth spread through his gloves as the sphere recognized his touch. In that instant, he realized he had earned her respect and that their bond had grown stronger through shared struggle together. They restored the chamber's power, and the entire ship hummed with renewed life. John and Tira exchanged a look of mutual trust before she nodded and turned to lead him onward to their next challenge. Tira woke on a soft slab of metal light pulsing gently overhead. She sat up slowly, the cool air of the medical bay brushing against her skin. Around her, pale lights danced over blinking consoles and hovering medibots. Her mind hummed with memory fragments. The hull breach, the repair beside John, the sudden weakness that had driven her here. A calm voice echoed in the bay. "Commander Tira," said an alien nurse with silver skin and gentle eyes, "all systems report normal, but your scan shows unexpected signs." The nurse tapped a holopad, and the projection shimmered into view. Tira's tall form loomed against the readout, and at the center glowed a strange symbol unfamiliar to her species. Tira frowned and rose unsteadily. She braced her hands on a nearby console. Fear prickled in her chest. The symbol pulsed once, more, then split into two images, a human and an alien joined by a bright spark. Tira's breath caught. She remembered the touch of John's hand on hers outside the ship. The moment had been simple yet powerful, a bond stronger than any protocol. The nurse watched her face, This indicates a hybrid gestation, the nurse explained. You carry a child born of both species. Tira's heart thundered. Hybrid life was forbidden by her people's law. To bear it was to face exile, even death. Tira clenched her fists. She would not let fear rule her. She would face this shock as she had faced every threat. She ordered the nurse, "Inform the High Council of my status." The nurse's eyes widened. "That is unprecedented, Commander." Tira gave a firm nod. "Do it." Meanwhile, John strode through the ship's Grand Plaza with diplomats from the human envoy. He sensed tension between the alien council members gathered around polished pillars. His heart raced as he remembered Tira's last look before collapse. He must find her. He reached the medical bay door just as the nurse projected Tira's status to the council chamber. Alarms did not sound, but the hush that followed felt heavier than any alarm. He stepped inside and saw Tira standing before the nurse, her back straight despite the tremor in her legs. John approached quietly. His voice was soft but urgent. "Tira, I heard. Are you?" Tira held up a hand. Her eyes met his, and she did not look away. He saw the fierce pride and the shadow of fear battling within her. "I carry our child," she said simply. The words hung in the air. John's breath caught. He slipped closer and bowed his head respectfully. "I will stand by you and by our child," he vowed. Tira's lips curved in a small, fierce smile. "Then we face the council together." Outside, the chamber doors slid open. Council members filed in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and dread. As they took their seats, Tira led John forward. She raised her voice so all could hear. "I name the child Hope for unity between our peoples." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some leaned forward, others recoiled. John tightened his grip on Tira's hand. The chamber lights dimmed, and the symbol of hybrid life projected behind them. In that moment, human and alien stood side by side, ready to face the shockwave their secret would unleash. The grand chamber gleamed with polished stone and crystal. Light as Tira entered beside John. Alien delegates filled tiered seats that rose like steps to the vaulted ceiling. At the far end, a semicircle of High Council members waited behind a translucent barrier. Tira's tall form cast a long shadow in the glowing hall. She stood before the barrier and raised her voice for all to hear. "Honored members of the council," she began. Her tone carried both command and plea. "I stand before you not only as commander of the Star Sentinel, but as bearer of new life. This child unites two species. I ask you to accept hope over fear." A hush fell. Counselor Merrick, a slender alien with silver tattoos, leaned forward. "You defy our laws," he said coldly. "Hybrid life is forbidden. Your actions risk our purity." Tira held her ground. "Our purity means little if we perish alone. This child proves our strength lies in unity. I ask for recognition and protection." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some delegates whispered support. Others recoiled. A group of extremists clad in dark armor rose together, their voices rising in protest. "Execution!" they shouted. "Exile!" Their anger echoed like a storm. John stepped forward, drawing surprised gasps from the assembly. "You have judged Tira too quickly," he said. His human accent sounded strange in the alien tongue, yet clear enough for those who listened. "Humans risked our lives to save your ship. Tira showed me respect and trust. Now we ask for peace." The extremists hissed. A sharp crack sounded as security drones activated. Council guards glided forward to stand at the barrier. Tira nodded to John but did not step back. She faced Merrick once more. "You speak of laws," she replied. "But what is law without life? What is code without compassion?" Counselor Merrick's eyes glowed. "Compassion is weakness," he retorted. "Your weakness endangers all." At that moment, the chamber lights flickered. An explosion rocked the lower levels. The barrier before the council shimmered as emergency protocols engaged. Alarms wailed and red lights pulsed through the hall. Panic spread among delegates. Tira and John exchanged a glance. "Sabotage," Tira said softly. She reached for John's hand and squeezed it. He returned her grip with steady courage. A hidden door at the chamber's base slid open. Extremist Stormrider and Draxus led a squad into the hall. They wielded pulse rifles and wore defiant snarls. "The council is ours," Stormrider declared, "for the purity of our race." Council guards leveled their weapons, but the saboteurs fired energy bolts that cut through the crystal pillars. Shards of light exploded in every direction. Delegates ducked as the floor trembled. Tira shouted an order in her native tongue. Guards parted to let her and John move forward. She dashed through scattering ambassadors toward the council dais. John followed. Drawing his sidearm and covering her flank dot, they reached the dais as Draxus raised his weapon to blast the barrier open. Tira lunged forward, her hand flashing with a plasma blade. She slashed the weapon's control panel, and sparks flew. The blast stalled. Draxus turned. Tira advanced, blade humming through the air. He fired twice, but Tira deflected the shots with her forearm guard. She closed the distance and struck his weapon arm, sending the rifle clattering to the floor. John tackled Stormrider before he could reach the dais. They grappled on the stone steps as guards and diplomats scrambled for cover. John felt the pain in his shoulder flare, but he held on and forced Stormrider down until guards cuffed him. In the confusion, Tira knelt before the highest council seat. Councillor Merrick tried to strike her, but a guard intercepted his hand. Tira pressed her palm to the barrier's control console. Holographic circuits blinked, and the barrier solidified once more. The saboteurs found themselves trapped on the floor below. Council guards secured them quickly, their discipline restored by Tira's decisive action. Silence returned to the chamber, broken only by the labored breathing of those who had witnessed the violent breach. Tira stood tall, her blade held low. By her side, John rose beside her, weapon lowered in respect. Councillor Merrick stepped forward. His face was grim, but his voice carried a new tone. "Tira," he said, "you saved the council. You risked your life to protect us. This act cannot be undone." Tira bowed her head slightly. "I acted for all our futures," she said. "Let us now choose unity over division." One by one, delegates rose from their seats. Some offered silent nods. Others clasped their hands in gratitude. The extremists remained silent, their rebellion crushed. At last, Councillor Merrick raised 3 fingers. "By this vote," he declared, "we recognize Tira's child as a symbol of unity. Human envoy John shall serve as liaison between our peoples. We will begin negotiations for alliance." A cheer rose in the chamber as hope glimmered in the crystal lights. Tira's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. John placed a hand on her shoulder and gave her a reassuring smile. Outside the grand hall, the plaza bustled with activity. Engineers tended to damaged consoles. Diplomats embraced in cautious celebration. News screens displayed the council's decision in brilliant text. Tira and John walked side by side beneath the nebula-tinged sky of their new home. They paused at a balcony overlooking the repair docks. "Our child will be born soon," John said softly. "This world will welcome her." Tira nodded. "We have faced fear and hatred," she replied, "but we have shown what courage and compassion can do." They clasped hands and looked toward the stars. The extremists' threat had been crushed. The council had chosen hope, and a new chapter began for both species. In that moment, the bond between human and alien felt stronger than ever, ready to guide them into a future where unity would light the way across the galaxy. The ship's plaza brimmed with life as dawn's pale light filtered through the nebula haze. Tira stood beside John on a raised platform above the repair docks. Around them, humans and aliens worked side by side, clearing debris and sharing tools. Tira's hand rested on her swollen belly. She smiled as a small group of children, half human and half alien, chased a glowing ball across the deck. Their laughter ran clear above the hum of machines. John watched Tira with pride in his eyes. He bent to tie a loose cable and pointed to a group of engineers adjusting a solar array panel. One engineer, an alien named Mika, nodded and waved. A human technician forward. The two exchanged instructions in a mix of broken phrases and gestures. John stood and placed a steady hand on Tira's shoulder. "Look how they learn to work together," he said softly. Tira's eyes glowed with hope as she felt the movement of their unborn child. Later that day, the High Council convened in a newly rebuilt chamber to formalize the alliance treaty. John stood at the human envoy desk beside Counselor Merrick, who now wore a simple brooch bearing both species symbols. Tira entered on a rising platform flanked by guards and witnesses. She paused and bowed deeply before the gathered delegates. The chamber fell silent as she spoke. "Today we mark a new chapter," Tira proclaimed. "We unite our strengths and our hopes in this alliance. Our child shall be born under peace." She lifted her hand and John joined her palm to hers. A soft glow radiated from the brooch. Delegates rose in applause, and the extremists who once shouted for her exile remained silent and unmoving. Their defeat had forged a lesson too clear to undo. In the weeks that followed, the star station transformed into a hub of culture and trade. Human chefs taught alien cooks how to bake bread. Alien musicians introduced new rhythms that humans learned with wonder. Tira and John walked through bustling markets where stalls displayed glowing crystals and fragrant spices. Tira paused to taste a sweet pastry and smiled at its warmth. John laughed as an alien baker bowed deeply in gratitude for her praise. Word of the hybrid child spread across the galaxy. Ships arrived from distant systems to congratulate the alliance. Delegations from friendly worlds brought gifts of art and technology. Tira received a woven tapestry depicting humans and aliens standing under twin suns. She unrolled it gently and found an image of her own silhouette beside John's, hands linked over her belly. Her heart swelled as she studied the intricate stitches of hope. On the eve before the birth, Tira's labor began in the medical bay. John held her hand as medibots hummed softly around them. Counselor Merrick and a human doctor named Elena stood nearby. Tira's strength showed in her steady breath despite the pain. John whispered words of encouragement, his voice calm and sure. "You are the bravest," he said. "Our child will know courage because of you." The birth chamber filled with soft light as the first cry echoed through the corridors. A hybrid baby girl lay swaddled in a blanket of woven silk and holographic threads. Her skin bore a gentle shimmer, and her eyes opened wide to stare at Tira and John. Tears slipped down Tira's cheeks as she held her daughter close. John brushed a strand of hair from Tira's brow and kissed her temple. "Welcome to our world," he murmured to the child. News of the birth reached the council and the entire station. Bells rang in celebration and airships glided in formation. Around the dome, children gathered at windows to wave ribbons and petals. Engineers paused their work to share in the joy. Even the extremists watched from behind secure glass, their faces unreadable. But as days passed, some approached Tira and John with hesitant smiles and small gifts, moved by the child's gentle presence. Months later, Tira and John stood on the same balcony where they first declared unity. Their daughter, named Asha, toddled between them, her laughter bright against the nebulous sky. Aliens and humans gathered below to greet them. Counselor Merrick stepped forward with a scroll. He read the new charter aloud, declaring free passage and mutual protection across their alliance. The crowd cheered, and Tira felt Asha's small hand grip her finger with trust. John lifted Asha into his arms and spun gently, her giggles dancing on the breeze. Tira watched as father and daughter moved as one, her heart full of peace. She placed her hand on John's shoulder and leaned into him. "We have come so far," she whispered. John kissed her forehead. "And we will go further," he replied as the twin suns set beyond the nebula clouds. The star station glowed with unity. A new era dawned for both species, bound by hope, courage, and the promise of shared life. Tira closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling Asha's small heartbeat against her chest. In that moment, she knew every trial had been worth the future they had forged together.